Welcome back to Sports Buzz and our new digs and our new set here on the Pulse Network at thepulsenetwork.com. Every Wednesday at 10:30, we embrace the snow. We embrace the madness. We check in with our good buddy Chuck Devine from snocountry.com and give you the latest and greatest reports from all around the world, all around the country, and all around the greatest ski slopes around. So you, if you're planning on skiing, can find out exactly what's going on, the best deals, the best conditions. Snow Country does it with a passion, snocountry.com. We bring in, and there it is, there's their website, snocountry.com. We've been partnered up with them all winter long here. We do it every Wednesday at 10:30, then it lives on their website, and our video content lives on our website, also within Sports Buzz. So without further ado, let me turn to my left, and we'll bring in our good buddy Chuck Devine. Hello, Chuck, how are you?
Hey, Butch, are you ready to embrace the shovel again?
I am, two things. I am ready to embrace the shovel, okay, number one, because we're getting more snow down here in the Boston and New England area tonight, overnight. But number two, I am embracing it because I leave Friday night and going to Shawnee Peak and taking the kids. So in a self-serving moment, I want to know what's going on in Shawnee Peak and what's going on in Cranmore and those areas there, because I'm going skiing Saturday with the kids.
Well, those areas have picked up plenty of snow over the past couple of weeks. I know Shawnee Peak had a big week for picking up snow last week. They got themselves to 100% of their terrain. That even included some of their gladed trails for skiing between the trees. So even if you're going on the groomers, they're going to be so well taken care of. They'll feel like a nice soft carpet. Shawnee Peak, Cranmore, Mount Washington Valley, whether you're skiing or doing cross country or maybe even trying a little snowmobiling, or maybe you want to find a dog sled tour, it's all going to be in tremendous shape, about as nice as you would like it to have it in the middle of winter.
Yeah, you know, when I go up there with the kids and I decide to take the whole day to go ski, there's so many choices around. You mentioned the Mount Washington Valley. You got Attitash, you've got Cranmore, you've got Shawnee Peak. Within an hour, you've got Sunday River. If you want to go further, I mean, I've got friends up at Sugarloaf, and I'll take the 3-hour drive from Naples, Maine to go there. But I have a hard time leaving Shawnee Peak. Maybe it's just because it's a mountain where it's just such a friendly mountain, and my kids have learned to ski there, so we really enjoy it there.
Well, you know, when they refer to Shawnee Peak, they say it's somewhere between being like a small mountain because it has a small mountain feel and a big mountain because it still has enough vertical, you know, so you're getting runs that are 1 and 2 miles long, and you're getting everything that you'd want. You can see from the pictures there with the terrain parks, too. You're getting everything you'd want from an advanced skier or snowboarder as well. So it fits the likes of what everybody wants when they head for the slopes.
Yeah, and it's also got night skiing, which a lot of places don't have. It's just a great time. I mean, I could go on and on. They do such a wonderful job up there. Let's go in.
And it's the closest bigger ski area in Maine, too.
Yeah, yeah. Let's go to Killington. The Dew Tour. We talked a lot about it last week and the week before. It was up there. Did you get a chance to go by there? What did we learn from the Dew Tour stopping at Killington?
Well, you know, the closest I got to the Dew Tour was when I was tuning into NBC on Saturday. But that was just exciting in itself to see Killington featured on a national television network. And it was great. You know, I had a chance to see the half-pipe competition for the most part. It was skiers in the half-pipe that I was watching at the time. And you're getting a little look at the skiers' slope style right there, working the rails and the jumps. And it was really an exciting event. Louis Vito won the snowboarding half-pipe. He was the favorite guy for the event. He was the guy who was in the Olympics and Dancing with the Stars. And then Vermont's own Kelly Clark took the women's half-pipe event. But it was just great to see Killington showcased. You know, you're watching it, you know, temperatures are right around 0 degrees, yet you're seeing crowds of thousands there. They had lots of live bands. It was really a great time at Killington, and it was really nice to see them showcase. They did a wonderful job getting all the terrain features together, as well as their super pipe for the Dew Tour, which is where the top pros compete, and they're heading for the X Games later on this week, which we'll talk about.
And ESPN is in full promo mode, promoting all the Winter X Games now. So it's cool, like you said, to have for us in New England, these guys stop by locally, showcase some of the local mountains, and now you're going to see them compete on a national stage.
Well, it's almost like having the playoffs right before the Super Bowl. Right. It's the same type of analogy almost. You know, this was their last final tune-up before heading into the X Games.
Let's move on to Stowe Mountain in Vermont. What's going on in Vermont?
Well, a lot of the biggest focus around Stowe over the past few years has been around their Spruce Peak and also their Stowe Mountain Lodge at Spruce Peak, which is they've created a whole village there. You get a look at it, and you know, they've got everything from the brick walkways, and it's really upscale. And what it's done is it's created a whole new facet for Stowe. And just recently, they did a torchlight parade and fireworks over at that area, which we'll get a look at. And that's something that a lot of the ski areas are doing on many weekends. Torchlight parade, it's really looks pretty wonderful, and it's a great thing to participate in, too. As you can see, it just has an incredible look to it when you are watching from the bottom of the mountain and you see them virtually lighting up the sky, because when they're right there on the slopes, all you can see is the lights, and you're seeing everyone there putting it out. And Stowe also does a whole thing at the end of their ski day where they're serving up cocoa and complimentary, and they like people to gather around that spruce lodge. They also, within the past few years, had set up a gondola, the Over Easy gondola, that takes you from that spruce lodge over to their other gondola at the main mountain. So Stowe has made a lot of improvements lately to really, establish themselves as one of the big upscale mountains in Vermont.
Where is Stowe in relation to Killington and Okemo, for example?
I would say it's probably an hour and a half north. As you're heading up I-89, you would take it beyond, where Vermont and New Hampshire meet.
We had Chuck Freeze on us for a second. We'll dial him back up and we'll get him back in. Is he here? Okay. Chuck, you there?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. You froze up on us for a second. It's cold where you are.
Oh, very cold, but warming up compared to the 25 below we had Sunday night going into Monday morning. So the Jets weren't the only thing that was frozen out on Sunday.
Oh, is that a shot at you, Phil? Is that a shot at you, Phil? Was that a shot at you? I think it was. Chuck, he has the buttons. You got to be careful.
Okay, well, but I guess once you go up I-89, you get past the Vermont-New Hampshire border, you go up another hour on I-89, and then it's a half hour from there on 100 North. So, an hour and a half from the Vermont-New Hampshire border.
Let's go down to New Hampshire, and three of the mountains in New Hampshire that you want to talk about. Wildcat, first of all, which is always a fun place to go.
Well, sure, and you were speaking about the Mount Washington Valley, and Wildcat also considered part of that, the most northern part of it. You're right near Gorham, New Hampshire, and Wildcat is a great mountain. It's one of those old-time mountains that's been around for a long time that really has some of the most stunning views of Tuckerman's Ravine at Mount Washington, and you can see there's the close-up right there. It's quite impressive when you're skiing at Wildcat and you're looking at that, and they have some great old New England-style trails. Polecat is one of their famous runs. That's kind of an upper novice, lower intermediate trail, Polecat is, and that run goes for almost 3 miles, which is great. And then they also have their Lynx Trail, which is another one of their famous runs, but also certainly some trails that are geared towards much more experienced skiers at Wildcat, but they also have their easier sections right on the bottom. Their lodge was built years and years ago, but they always have their parties with I know the guy who performs and plays his guitar there is a big Red Sox and Patriots fan, so he has a lot of anecdotes that deal with the teams, and it's always a good time for people to hang out in much more the old-fashioned New England style way at Wildcat, while still having some of the most impressive trails in New Hampshire to ski.
We mentioned in the Mount Washington Valley, Mount Cranmore, Attitash, and as you said, Wildcat Mountain. But also at the Mount Washington Resort is Bretton Woods. Does Bodie Miller and his family still own Bretton Woods, didn't they?
Well, I don't know if they ever owned Bretton Woods. I know it was one of Bodie's hangouts. He lived in a home near there, as well as near Cannon Mountain, where he did a lot of his skiing growing up. And Bretton Woods and Cannon aren't far apart from each other. Now, Bretton Woods, has their Grand Hotel, and they're owned by Omni Resorts now. At least the hotel is, and you can see it right there. That hotel was established in 1902.
Wow. And
then they recently, they have 200 rooms, and I've stayed there on a couple of occasions, and it's just one of those things, if you're a New Englander and you're into skiing, it's one of those things that's really worth splurging for. They did $50 million in renovations in 2007, and I've had the opportunity to ski at Bretton Woods, and I really love it. They have a lot of these gentler trails, but they've done some expansion to the point where they have the most acreage of any New Hampshire ski area, and some great gladed skiing too. So if you ever enjoyed skiing in the trees, Bretton Woods gives you a good selection of it. You're not necessarily always going through the steeps to go through the trees. There are times when you can do tree skiing at Bretton Woods where it's not quite as difficult, and you're going to see, I think, the skier here who has a helmet cam on is getting ready to enter some of those gladed trails. And at some of Bretton Woods trails, their gladed runs are a little gentler and the trees are spaced further apart. So if you just wanted to get started in glade skiing, Bretton Woods is a place to do it. I had an opportunity to do it last year when there was 6 inches of fresh snow on the ground. It was enough just to get a smooth glide as you're going between all the trees, and it's really a pretty wonderful feeling. So Bretton Woods, one of the gems in northern New Hampshire. You know, we talk about Loon and Waterville Valley and Cannon and Wildcat. Bretton Woods is every bit as much fun as all those other ski areas are.
Now, what is glade skiing?
Glade skiing is when you're going skiing between the trees, and what has happened is the ski areas during the summer months have created these gladed trails by cutting down a certain amount of trees so you can weave in and out of the trees. Now, there's varying degrees of difficulty. Some trees are pretty tight, and some of them where they're a little more spaced apart. And if the trees are tight also and the glades aren't quite as steep, that will also make them a little bit easier to negotiate. But it takes a skier who has a bit of experience under his or her belt, and you can see them going through right there. But you can notice that it's quite a bit of fun. And when you've had fresh snowfalls and extra powder, it's also a lot more fun to ski in the glades. Otherwise, they're forming a lot more moguls, and then it involves a little bit more of a degree of difficulty. Just a different challenge and a different experience when you're going to the slopes, you know, something different from just groomed trails.
Let's stay in New Hampshire and talk about Pat's Peak. They're having a diversity day coming up.
Well, they had their diversity day for Martin Luther King Day. And one of the things I wanted to talk about with Pat's Peak, you know, it's one of the smaller ski areas in southern New Hampshire, but it has it all. They're showing the snow tubing there. It's a great area for kids. If you're a parent who's taking your kids to the mountain, all the chairs lead right up to the top, which is, you know, just a 600 vertical. But it's one of those really, really fun areas that's not too far away, that also has night skiing, you know, similar in the vein of Shawnee Peak that you were talking about, maybe not quite as big as Shawnee, but it's always a great time, and it has so much to offer at Pat's Peak. So I figured, you know, we'd get a chance to show a little bit of it there. Not only that, they were the first area, at least that I can recall, in New England that was able to get 100% open, and that speaks volumes for their snowmaking, considering the fact that their elevation isn't all that high, and they don't have as northerly location as a lot of the other ski areas. So it's one of those great family spots where you'd love to take your kids. That's only an hour from Boston.
We're talking to Chuck Devine of snocountry.com. I encourage you to go to their website, snocountry.com. I encourage you to go to our website, thepulsenetwork.com. Under Sports Buzz, you'll see our weekly segments that Chuck and I do and talk here on Wednesdays from 10:30 to 11 o'clock. If you go to their website, they really make it easy for you to check out an individual mountain, check out the areas of the country. There's Jackson Hole, Wyoming. You go to the bottom of the page, they've got related videos on the bottom of every page, including our segments here from the Pulse Network that Chuck and I do. There it is right there. And look at Smuggler's Notch video and the Skiing Weatherman they have and other stuff. We are happy to be partnered up with snowcountry.com and be a part of their coverage because they do it with passion, and you guys really do a great job, Chuck.
Well, thank you very much. You know, when I do my preparations for this show, snowcountry.com is the place I start because that's where I'm going to be able to get access to all the videos I want to see so I can eventually put them on the Pulse Network. So it shows you that if you want access to videos, or if you're planning a ski trip, you want to know how much snow has fallen lately, or you just want to know what great programs the ski area has for kids or anything like that, Snow Country is the great place to start to get the synopsis about the areas, and then you can click to get right to the areas so they can tell you the rest. All
right, let's zip around the country outside of New England. Let's go down south of here to West Virginia and Snowshoe Mountain. You've talked about Snowshoe before on this show.
Yes, I have. You know, it's been a great snow year for areas in the Mid-Atlantic, and Snowshoe is no exception to that. You know, a lot of ski areas in that same region, Snowshoe, West Virginia, Canaan Valley, Timberline, as well as Wisp in Maryland, Seven Springs, Pennsylvania. They've been picking up snow on a regular basis, and many of them closing in on 200 inches of snow so far this winter. You can see Snowshoe's put together a pretty incredible terrain park right there, has some medium to large size features, and they've done a great job at their mountain there at 100%. So whether you want to take on the steeps or do the easy runs of the terrain parks or snowmobiling, cross-country snowshoeing, Snowshoe has it all, and very accessible for people who live in Virginia or West Virginia, North Carolina, even as far south as Georgia and Florida like to make Snowshoe their home. They're very much the Killington of the Mid-Atlantic region.
All right, let's go from the Mid-Atlantic north and west, if you will, and let's go to Colorado first. You mentioned the Dew Tour at Killington and how it's going to go national. Well, the X Games are going to be held in Colorado coming up at Snowshoe Terrain Park, or in Aspen. That's where they're going to be, right?
They're taking place at Aspen, and that's where they've taken place for the past several years now. I can recall when they took place at Mount Snow, and they just draw incredible crowds because it's a whole atmosphere thing, because they have the bands and everything, and you can see that there's this is one of the preview promotional videos for the Winter X Games coming up, whether they're on motorized snowmobiles working in their own type of terrain park, or you have skier cross where they're going head-to-head on skis or a snowboard that looks a lot like motocross, and the skiers are, bumping and jockeying for position. This is where the best of winter sports culminates when it comes to a lot of the extreme sports, whether it's the type of thing you saw on the Dew Tour with the slope style or the super pipe, or whether you're talking about a lot of the different snowmobiling events or big air competitions. It's all taking place at Aspen this weekend. It starts off on ESPN, I know, on Thursday and Friday, and then it's going to work its way to ABC during the weekend. They found their niche in their weekend. It's right after the playoffs and right before the Super Bowl. You'll always know that is the weekend when the X Games are taking place, and that is more or less the Super Bowl for extreme winter sports.
I definitely, if this segment's done nothing else for me, it's whet my appetite to go to Colorado. Other places, yes, Wyoming and Utah and places that you hear about, but Colorado, I've had great experiences in that state and in Denver. Obviously, the Red Sox won the World Series there, but I've always liked the city of Denver. But I always convey this to you and others, that when you land in Colorado, and whenever I've been to Denver, it reminds me that it's the West, that it's the old West. You just get the feeling. There's hitching posts outside of bars and restaurants for people to still hitch their horses up to. So let's stay in Colorado and go to Steamboat. And they got a cowboy downhill. There are true cowboys that still live in Colorado, aren't there?
Sure, and the first time I ever went skiing in Colorado was at Steamboat, so I'll always have fond memories of what a great trip it was. And there's your cowboy downhill right there. And when you're driving from the airport to Steamboat, when you're within 2 hours, they're already talking about shops where you can buy cowboy hats and leather boots and belts and all that stuff, and you can see that's a pretty wild race.
Well, Chuck, I'm laughing because it looks like they should probably stay on their horses instead of snowboards or skis for most of them.
Well, yeah, it was more or less not as much a rodeo as it was a stampede, that particular run. But Steamboat is one of the great places in Colorado, and I believe it is the fourth most visited ski area in North America. So it's a very popular place to hit the slopes as well.
Let's go to Wyoming and Jackson Hole. I mean, that's one of those magical names, and you've got a video here about Action Jackson. What's that all about?
I think it was put together by a group of extreme skiers and riders who like to get into some of the steeper terrain and do some of the jumps, and they're sort of celebrating the fact that Jackson Hole has picked up 300 inches of snow so far this winter. So there's no quitting on the snowfall. From December right into January, they kept getting constant snowfalls, including 3.5 feet of snow over the past couple of weeks. And they're showing a lot of the folks, getting psyched about going on the chair. And eventually you'll get a chance to see that Jackson Hole just has some of the wildest terrain. They have 2,500 acres of skiing and riding at Jackson Hole, and their vertical is some 4,000 feet. Now, when you compare that to some of the biggest New England ski areas we have here. Now, Killington has a vertical of 3,000 feet, but contiguous vertical for Killington trails really only 2,000 feet. So you're looking at trails that you're looking at top to bottom skiing that's twice as big, when you're going from the base lodge right to the summit, and when you're getting to elevations that are over 10,000 feet, you're getting into some pretty wild powdery terrain, and that's what Jackson Hole is all about. Not maybe as easy to get to as some of the western ski areas, although it does have its own airport only 10 miles away. But it's a vast ski area that I think many of us would like to ski or ride at one time in our lives.
Let's finish up with two areas or two ski slopes in California. Heavenly Ski Resort. I mean, does the name say all we need to know, Chuck?
Well, yes, and they're located in the Lake Tahoe region. You know, we often talk about Squaw Valley and North Star and Alpine Meadows and some of the other areas, and Heavenly is one of them. And the reason I wanted to bring up California is because, you know, they had such tremendous snow in December, and they have not seen a lick of snow in the last 3 weeks. So grooming has become essential, and they're showing the miles and miles of corduroy they have there. They even do something called high-angle grooming, where they go on some of their steepest trails and they're running the grooming machines there because when you haven't had natural snow in a while, you want to get a lot of those trails groomed. They make them a lot more palatable to go skiing and riding on unless the temperature is getting up to 50 and 60 degrees where it can soften up the snow. So instead, they have to groom those trails. They had such a tremendous snowfall in December, and thank goodness for that, because in the last 3 weeks, there has not been a lick of snow in California. They'll get back into it again, and the Pineapple Express will get rolling. And once it does start snowing there, it'll be measured in 4 and 5 feet like we were talking about a few weeks ago.
Chuck, in that video we were watching at Heavenly, is that Lake Tahoe in the background? And if it is, how many mountains and ski resorts are there around Lake Tahoe?
You know, I should know the answer to that. It is Lake Tahoe in the background. I would say in the Lake Tahoe region, there has to be a minimum of 8 skiers. I'm thinking there's more like a dozen.
Wow, look at that.
They're big and small, whether they're Boreal and Soda Springs that are catering to the kids. You have them on the Nevada side in areas like Heavenly that encompass both California and Nevada.
That's amazing. That's just majestic, isn't it?
It sure is, and just wonderful views. You know, one of the closest things we get to that is when you get to Gunstock in New Hampshire, or Sunapee, where you get nice lakefront views from some of the trails, or say Camden Snowbowl in Maine, where you can actually see the Atlantic Ocean, which is even more impressive because from Camden Snowbowl, when you're looking at the Atlantic Ocean, you can actually see wide open waters. Whereas when you're looking at Winnipesaukee or Lake Sunapee, by the time January rolls around, the lakes are pretty much frozen over and they're starting to look like the rest of the landscape when they're snowed on.
Let's finish up with Bear Mountain. Again, one of those cool names. Are you going to find actual bears there on Bear Mountain?
Well, Ski Big Bear is in Southern California, and I'm sure they have some bears around the mountain, around the ski area. You're going to find a lot more teens, I think, because they're really geared towards a younger crowd. And they're, like I said, they're only 2 hours away from L.A. As a matter of fact, you can find skiing within an hour and a half of L.A. and within an hour of, say, the San Fernando Valley. And you can see some of the kids who are working in the terrain parks there. There you see a disabled skier working on his apparatus. But what you're noticing is that these kids are in light clothing and T-shirts. They've seen temperatures of 60 degrees. And once again, the cold, snowy December was their salvation. And since then, they've been able to hold on to their snow. They made a lot of snow during December, and they've been able to keep all their terrain parks open, which has maintained their appeal. But a lot of appeal to the youngsters at those areas, as terrain parks are every bit as much a feature as are the wide open trails at places like Bear Mountain and Snow Summit and Mountain High. Those are the 3 major areas, and Snow Valley also in that area. So they've managed to hold on to their skiing despite what has been lack of snow in January and what's become a very warm January too. So it speaks volumes to the amount of snowmaking they were able to do during the month of December, considering that they haven't had a chance to do much lately.
All right, great job today, Chuck. I'm going to go skiing somewhere this weekend, either Shawnee Peak. I might take the kids to Bretton Woods, and I'm going to bring my Kodak ZI-8 camera with my tripod that can wrap around my wrist. So I'm going to have some footage for you next week, and hopefully we'll do a little guided tour with my kids narrating some things, and so you can critique our video of us skiing next week, all right?
Oh, wonderful. I'm really looking forward on going to that area later on towards March. So you're going to give me a sneak preview.
All right, I'll give you a sneak preview, and maybe it's a video you can feature up on snowcountry.com. Hey, great job today, Chuck. Really enjoyed spending time with you today.
Thanks, Butch.
All right, Chuck Devine from snowcountry.com. Again, you can find all you need to know if you're a skier, or if you're even thinking about taking the family skiing, or if you've got a group of kids that want to ski, maybe you don't ski, you want to find out what's going on at those resorts, when the lodges are open, how big the drinks are they serve. Trust me, you can find it all out at snowcountry.com. This is Sports Buzz on the Pulse Network. We've been civil for most of this time, but right around this time of day, things start to get a little unruly. I'm not sure if Maggie is going to be smacking any kids in the face like that guy playing the X-Connect thing there, Xbox or whatever. But the unruly sports date is coming up next with Maggie Rulli.